So we are talking about an entity that is worse than Nazis. These Islamo-Nazis at the 7th of October were very proud of what they did. When her babies are being burnt, I'm doing something that Allah likes it. Allahu Akbar.
There's a section of Israel that reminds me of Arafat. In the United States, we have people that say this is like a radical Islamic jihadist. I think it's hilariously stupid. So to try to historically define the Palestinian people as not existing, and then therefore to say that all of them should march away, I just don't think that's a very realistic end state for the conflict.
שלום לכולם, יש לי משהו חשוב לספר לכם. פתחתי קורס למידה. כמו שאתם יודעים, אני גדלתי באשקלון, ילד עני, בלי כסף ובלי קשרים. והדבר היחידי שהציל אותי מהחיים הבינוניים שיכלו להיות לי בגיל 17, זה לצבור יותר ידע מכולם. שיהיה כמה שיותר איכותי, בצורה יותר מהירה ויותר יעילה. להשתמש במוח שלי בשביל להשיג את המטרות שלי. בזכות הידע שצברתי, הצלחתי להפוך להיות אחד הפודקאסטים הגדולים בישראל כבר בגיל 21, ולמרות שעשיתי שירות צבאי מלא, ולצאת מהבית של ההורים למרות הסיפור שלי כבר בגיל 20. בחמש השנים האחרונות יצרתי שיטה שתאפשר לכל אחד מאיתנו ללמוד יותר מהר, יותר יעיל, ואשכרה לזכור את מה שלמדנו וליישם את מה שלמדנו. ואת השיטה עצמה אני הולך ללמד בהכשרה שבניתי. הרכישה המוקדמת להכשרה נפתחה עכשיו. אז אם אתם רוצים ליהנות עכשיו ממחיר מיוחד, לפני שהוא עולה, תלחצו על הקישור שנמצא בתיאור או בתגובה המוצמדת למטה בתגובות, ובואו נתחיל בפודקאסט. Hello there guys, it's me Moshe Fabrikant and we are in the Moshe Fabrikant podcast. Today we have two great people that I truly do admire. First, I'll start with Moshe Feiglin, which is a former member of the Knesset and has the party called Zehut, which is identity in Hebrew. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you, Moshe.
Also, we'll talk to Kenneth Bonnell, aka Destiny, one of the biggest political commentators in the world. I truly do appreciate you coming here. And thank you, Stephen. How are you?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me.
Great. So what I will do, like we did in like the last debate, I want you guys please to clarify your stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. May we start with Destiny first? Briefly, of course. Briefly.
Yeah, well, that's a long. Yeah. I guess basically the way that I look at it is, it's a conflict with history that is told differently by both sides. I feel like both sides kind of ignore the other's complaints and they selectively focus on their own. I think that I tend to think the Israeli version of history is a little bit more accurate, but I think that this kind of like, as long as everything has gone on and with the power and security that Israel has amassed today, I think that Israel could do a better job at bringing the conflict to a close. But it feels like Israel is always kind of maximizing for the short-term political gain or short-term territory gain, and they seem to keep thinking that they can push the problem further and further down the road without actually fixing it, with the hopes that it'll, I guess, just magically go away someday. So it's kind of where I'm at right now, yeah.
I understand. Moshe Feiglin, please clarify your stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Of course, briefly, shortly.
I think I agree with everything Stephen said.
Okay.
I'm not sure from the same reasons, if it's for the same reasons, but I could not find anything that I disagree with in what Stephen just said. Yes, Israel is definitely trying to, sweep the problems under the rug, or the hot coals under the rug all the time, instead of, for once and for all, telling the truth, was the deep reason for that conflict. And by the way, I very much did not like the fact that you used the word, Moshe, the word Palestinians.
You did not like that I used it.
I did not like. It's maybe the biggest lie of the 20th century, the very existence of that so-called nation. And that is one of the problems. Once you're not telling the truth, there's no way you'll be able to solve the problem.
I understand. Okay, so first of all, let's then start with this. Why do you think Palestinians don't exist? And then we'll why don't the Palestinians exist? And then Stephen reply to that. Moshe, explain.
Because they have no history. And by the way, many of their leaders and intellectuals agree with that, saying that publicly. The so-called Palestinian nation was invented somewhere in the mid 20th century, The PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was established in 1964, 3 years before the Six-Day War, okay, before Israel took over the Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria. If I'll ask you to mention a name of a Palestinian king from the 17th century, or I don't know, or poet from the 18th century, you will not be able to, because there is no Palestinian nation and there is no Palestinian history. It is simply a lie, narrative that every honest historian will tell you that that's what it is. Yet the whole world is using that lie, and again, I'm saying, when you're not honest, there'll be no solution.
Stephen.
I guess this is one of those things where it feels like we want to win like a modern argument by trying to establish some kind of historical argument. So this is like a thing that I tend to side more, I guess, with the West on, or Israelis on, in terms of history. You have some people that kind of make this foolish claim that Palestinian history goes back hundreds or thousands of years. I've heard, depending on who you're talking to. I do agree that the Palestinian identity largely sprang up kind of in response to, I guess, like the waves of immigrants from Europe or Eastern Russia, from Jews coming in at the late 1800s, early mid 1900s. But I guess I'm just not sure what the point of the argument is. There clearly are a large group of people that identify as Palestinian Arabs, Palestinian Arab Israelis, Palestinians, whatever they call themselves, whatever you want to call them. And there's an issue there that has to be dealt with in terms of, territorial separation and the feeling that there are some people that are owed a country. And I don't know if that can be hand waved away by saying, well, the unique Palestinian identity only emerged in response to Jewish immigration to the Levant. I don't know if that works there. I mean, if you look over, like for the Jordanian kingdom, that the Hashemites only ruled since basically the 20s, right? The early 20s. It's not like you had all these
1922.
Yeah. So it's not like you had all these super unique Arab identities, but I think that with the fall of the Ottoman Empire, with kind of like the cutting of everything up into different countries, you have like different peoples that kind of emerge from these areas that want to rule their countries. And so you get, in the mandatory Palestine area, you get these Arabs that eventually come to be known as Palestinians for whatever reason. So I guess to summarize, like I agree that the notion of like this 1,000-year-old Palestinian identity is stupid, and it's a talking point that a lot of people use, and I think it's dumb. But I don't know if dealing with that gets us any closer to getting people to kind of solve any of the modern issues that exist between the Palestinian people and the Israeli people today.
Well, there are definitely people over there, families over there, tribes, maybe groups of some kind of an entity that is bigger than just families. But there are no nation. There is no nation. Maybe we should go deeper, Stephen, and decide, is there a reality somewhere along the way? I believe there is, because I believe in God. And if there's a reality, there's truth and false, and should we care about it? The very simple fact is that the only claim to any square inch of the land of Israel, the promised land, that was done by these people who call themselves Palestinians, was always to the square inch that being held by the Jews. For example, as I mentioned before, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation, the so-called Palestinian, I should say, organization was established in 1964, and then all they wanted is to take over Israel, which is in the what they call today the Green Line. They did not ask then for the Strip of Gaza and to Judea and Samaria, simply because it was held by Egypt. Gaza was held by Egypt, and the Judea and Samaria was held by the Jordanians then. So you see, and this is a very simple historical fact that no one can say it's not true, that their problem is not to have a land of their own, their national, so-called national land of their own. Their problem is that the Jews will not have the land of Israel. By the way, in 1947, when the British foreign minister Ernst Bevin came to the UN to explain to the entire world before the decision to separate the land between Jews and Arabs, the famous decision from the 29th of November 1947. So Ernst Bevin come as the representative of the British Empire who ruled Palestine. Yes, they had the mandate and they ruled the place for 30 years. So he came to the UN to explain what the problem is. It's fascinating to listen to how this Bevin explained it. And let me tell you, Stephen, Bevin was not a Jew lover, okay? He was in charge of the white paper. He was in charge of not letting refugees from the Holocaust come to Israel, the famous Exodus, and so on. So he did not come from a point that in favor of the Jews. And he explained there the problem like this. He said, the Jewish goal is to have a Jewish state at Palestine. The British called the state of Israel then Palestine. They did not believe. He didn't talk about Palestinians. He talked about the land. So when the British ruled the place, they called it Palestine. So he said the Jewish goal is to have a Jewish state in Palestine. The Arab goal, he said, he did not say Palestinian goal, he said Arab goal. The Arab goal, he said, is that the Jews will never have a Jewish state in Palestine. You see, Stephen, it is not a war, and he was absolutely right, and nothing changed since then. And that is the truth that we have to realize, okay, in order to solve the problem. There is no nation, there is no Palestinian nation, and there is no any real wish to create a Palestinian state. All they wish for is to throw the Jews to the Mediterranean, and as they said once, to finish what Hitler did not finish in Europe. And they will never, ever agree to have a square inch in the Middle East ruled by not by Islam, by the way.
So Moshe, in the soundbite, what you're saying basically is that the Palestinians are a reaction to the Jews.
Yes, yes.
Stephen.
I agree that they don't want the existence of a Jewish state there, but I agree that their identity is a reaction to the Jews, but I think that identity would have been a reaction to any group that would have moved in there. If it would have been a group of Christians, there's no world where they would have been okay with a small Christian nation, especially of what they perceived to be, and what was at the time, largely European settlers coming in and setting up a country there after so many other countries were being carved out and given, or sometimes through war, carved out, like in Turkey's case, to the surrounding people after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. I think when you see Iraq be established, when you see Jordan be established, all the Gulf states and Egypt and Turkey fights their war, and everybody is getting a country, and you're getting more and more of these perceived outsiders, these white, Europeans coming in. I think that the feeling is like, well, hold on, what's going on here? Now, in this case, they're Jewish, and obviously, for whatever reasons that are beyond me, everybody has their issue with Jewish people. Islamic people are not excluded from that, and I'm sure that hurt a little bit more, especially with the perception of Jewish people and everything at the time. And the idea of them coming in and setting a nation was not a thing they ever wanted. Again, I think that there's a lot of talking points on the pro-Palestinian side that are stupid. The talking points that, well, they were going to give the Jews 58% of the land, even though they were, whatever percent of the population or only had this percent. Like, this is dumb because the reality is the Arabs wouldn't have accepted any percentage of the land for the Jews. After you're talking about the partition 181, I agree with that would have never been okay. But I think it was because the perception was this is the only place in the husk of the Ottoman Empire where European settlers appeared to be moving in and settling, their own, to create their own state. Now, that being said, I think that these are really good arguments for, expulsion or for fighting a war in the 40s or 50s or maybe 60s. But the reality is, and, I guess it's sad, it's tragic, but there are kind of like two ways to go about things. You can either do it like Turkey, where you either mass expel, Greek people, or mass murder, Syrian people or Assyrians or whatever, or I'm sorry, Armenians, or the early state of Israel decided not to mass murder every single Arab that lived within the confines of their territory. And because they didn't do that, as a result of that, now we're here, 80 years later, and there's a huge Palestinian or Arab Palestinian or whatever you want to call them population of people who Israel has more or less kind of has like flirted with giving them some form of state for some time. And there's no amount of historical arguments that is going to flip a switch or a light bulb in that population to make them go, oh, you're right. We're just going to all leave and go to Syria, Lebanon, over to Jordan, or maybe down to Egypt, and we're going to be cool. Not to Egypt, probably. And we're going to go to Jordan. We're going to be cool with everything. Like, I just don't think that's going to happen. It's just not a very realistic end game. And I don't think that argument is going to be very persuasive to any of the people there. And I would also argue, I don't feel like the Palestinians that exist today are not the same types of Palestinians I would say that existed before, right? When the PLO is founded as basically like a Fedayeen, freedom fighter group, I guess, or a terrorist group, depending on your perspective. I think the PLO that existed back then is not the same as the PLO that exists today, I would argue. So I think it's possible to create that final negotiated peace. And it seems like there's a history of trying to negotiate that peace. So to try to historically define the Palestinian people as not existing, and then therefore to say that all of them should, I guess, like march away. I just don't think that's a very realistic end state for the conflict.
Moshe.
Okay, so if history doesn't matter and truth doesn't matter, so the question is, what is? I think nothing changed in reality. Okay, maybe today they playing with computers and then they used different tools, but the goal is exactly the same goal. Look, Stephen. Today there are 800,000 Arabs, not Palestinians, Arabs, residents of the Gaza Strip, Arabs that left in the Gaza Strip. The numbers that flies are total another big lie.
They're saying 2 million.
They're saying 2 million, and they're pushing numbers from the air, and everybody repeat these numbers. And I'm standing behind what I'm saying. It's not more than 800,000. 99, probably 100% of them wished to leave, and left even before the 7th of October. They paid $10,000 to Hamas and to Egypt, bribed, to let them leave. Hundreds of thousands of them left already. They found a better future in different all over the world. They definitely don't want to stay there. President Trump came with that as a solution. Israel did not pick up on that simple solution. That a solution that did not talk about slaughtering anybody and killing everybody, even though this is exactly what the Brits and the Americans did the minute the wheel of war changed. World War II, I mean. Every German city that the Royal Air Force could get a grip on, they burned to ashes. Hamburg and Dresden and so on, without any humanitarian aid. And let me tell you something: no German soldier crossed the channel and slaughtered kids and raped women and did nothing compared to what these monsters did, these Islamo-Nazis did to us. And yet they wish to leave. There is no problem of a destination where they can go. It is the only problem that we ourselves, the Israelis, trying to preserve, to keep the Oslo concepts going on and don't want to take responsibility to the Strip of Gaza. I think, and maybe that's the deep difference between us, Stephen, I think that there is truth and there is the concept of justice. And justice begins from the very simple question, who this land belongs to. It's not about numbers, if it's 800,000 or 2 million. It's about the simple question, who this land belonged to. And the land of Israel belonged to the people of Israel, not to anybody else. 80-90% of the Arabs you see today between the Mediterranean, between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, came after the Zionist movement started to bring the Jews back to the land of Israel.
With the Aliyahs.
With the Aliyahs. There's no nation that as a nation has such a deep history on a strip of land like the connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. This is the land that was promised to us by God. You can see it at the Bible that most of humanity believes in, including the Arabs, by the way. And this is our land. And just as we don't looking to take over Cairo or Iraq or Tehran, because it's not our land. What is our land, it's ours. And if somebody else claims that it's his, well, that's a declaration of war, and he cannot stay here. It is very, very simple. Now, the way to show them the way to a better place for them, to find their future in a better place, can be either by carrots or by sticks. But the only way to solve the conflict is by understand where the justice is. The land belongs to us. And just to tell you one more thing, after World War II, when the war was over, the British Army and the Americans pushed over 10 million Germans that lived for hundreds of years in Eastern Europe, in the Sudets, in Czechoslovakia, in Poland, walked all over the continent back to their homeland in Germany, to the ruins of Berlin and Hamburg, okay? About 1 million died on the process, men, women, children, okay? And that was after the war, after they won the war. I'm talking about the Allies, Democrats. Why did they do this? You can see all the pictures on YouTube. Really. Why did they do that? Because Hitler used these people, okay, as an excuse to start the war. And they realized that as long as they're staying there, we're going to have World War III right in 20 years from now. So when you really understand that you're not willing to pay this price anymore, and this is the solution. So this is the solution, Stephen. There's no a nice way to say it. This is the solution. You see tens of millions of immigrants that left Syria, for example, and found themselves in Europe, immigrants from Ukraine. What can you do when you declare a war? And definitely when you act like Islamo-Nazi, like evil of all evil, after the 7th of October, you lose the last moral claim to stay in our land, in the Gaza Strip. And now let's find the most humane way to find you a better place for your future.
Stephen.
I mean, I don't know what to say. It's just this is never happening. I'm sympathetic again to the historical arguments, but I mean, I said it a while ago. You can be like Turkey. You can be like the Allies post World War II, but that was a different time. It was it was 70 years ago. The world is just not the same place that it used to be. I think that, Benny Morris says this, that it's sad, but if well, I guess it depends on your perspective. Maybe if you wouldn't be sad, but if the Israelis had cast out all of the Arabs from the Levant, from the mandatory Palestine area, if they had moved all of them out and there was just the country of Israel, we wouldn't be talking about it today. It would be what it is.
Right.
But that's not the situation. We've had, multiple attempts at agreements between Oslo 1, Oslo 2. The idea that everything is going to change now and Israel can just make the best argument ever, and then all the Arabs are going to be like, okay, you're right, we're just going to leave. I just don't think it's a realistic solution. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think there's any movement in that direction. I don't foresee any movement in that direction. I don't even think Israel's domestic population would bear that type of direction. So it just seems like fantasy to me. I think even domestically, I don't even think Israel's population would necessarily support that as a solution. The marching of every single Arab out of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. I don't know. I just don't think there's a very realistic solution.
And just to clarify, Moshe, you're not talking about Nakba 2, like quote unquote.
I'm not talking about marching. I'm not talking about killing. I'm not talking about anything that the Americans did to the Germans, as I described. And you can open, as I said, the YouTube and see the films. That's not about what I'm talking about. I said it can be done in the most humane way, which I don't think the Arab in the Gaza Strip deserve, by the way, but let it be, okay?
So
and
willingly?
They did it willingly before the 7th of October, as I described. They paid $10,000, okay? Bribed the Hamas regime and the Egyptian army to let them leave. They had jokes that soon the last one is going to shut off the light of Gaza. I believe that one of the reasons Sinwar started a war because he realized that soon he's going to have no people to keep on going with this foolish game of his. Okay,
and use them as human shields.
Yeah. We don't understand. They don't see their future in Gaza anyhow. It's us, the Israelis, that being bad or not humane to them, not opening the border and giving them the ability to leave. Okay, if we wanted them to not to be there, definitely in a long-term plan, in 5-10 years plan, it would have been very, very worthwhile to the Israeli government to give $1 million to every big family. Chamula, as they call it, okay, not tribe, something between a tribe and a family, okay? I don't know what the English word for chamula is. However, to start their life somewhere else, it would have been much cheaper than all these wars. Basically, you can create a incentive to them and help them find their future in a better place. Today, there's a new place, Somaliland, that already said once that they're willing to have them. So no, it's not about something not humane. And by the way, Stephen, the human nature is the same 70 years ago and today. And the original goal of the destruction of Israel is the same goal. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, as they say, and we have to. And after so many attempts to solve the problem in Oslo, and I think there was no other group of people, definitely not a nation, that got so much help, okay, from everybody, including the people that they're supposed to get their country on their own land. And that did not happen. Stephen, they don't want a state. They want the Jews not to have state and not to have the ability to breathe air to live in their homeland. That's the story here. And it'll not going to be solved unless we realize that we have to start thinking out of the box and not turn our face from the truth.
Stephen.
I mean, my position is unchanged. I don't think it's a very realistic solution. I think If this, like in a world where you would even entertain a solution like this, then if that was to be the case, then the priority for Israeli political leadership would be to engage in constructive dialogue with surrounding Arab states to try to make this happen, because it sounds like you're going to have to facilitate a mass movement of Palestinian Arab citizens within the boundaries of Israel. And I think that there's like a Arab resolution. It's like 1537 or 1357. There's one that says, I don't even think you're allowed to give citizenship to anybody from the Palestinian areas. You're not allowed to even give them citizenship to an Arab country. So they would have to redo that. So there would have to be like, but I mean, it's a separate topic, but like, I feel like Israeli political leadership is never very concerned with the, I guess with the political realities that exist for other leaders around them. I feel like sometimes they look inward a little bit too much and they don't conceive of the political maneuvering that surrounding Arab states have to do. If this was a solution that you wanted, it would have to be done with high levels of cooperation with surrounding Arab states, not with just with the Saudis, but with like the Jordanians and with, I don't know, whatever's going on in Syria, with somehow with Egypt and I guess Somaliland. I don't know much about what the existence of this place is going to look like, but until that happens, yeah, there's not just going to be nobody's mass leaving, even with some dollar offer to go to some other place. I don't think domestically Israel would support it. I don't know if the international community would support it. I don't think the surrounding Arab states would support it. I don't think the Palestinians where they're at right now would support it. Like, it's just a thing that has I don't see any conceivable way for that plan to move forward in today's world.
Okay, so you're talking, Stephen, about practicality. So yeah. I'll start from the end. President Trump came and offered it to us. Why didn't we pick it up? Okay, I 100% agree with you that we are the problem. That our governments are the problem. Okay, we decided that we don't want it. If you want, I'll explain to you why, against all odds, Israel did not jumped on the opportunity to do that. But to say that internationally we have a problem, it's not true. We got offered. I mean, the president of the strongest state on earth was actually pushing to that direction. Now, you're also right, and it's fascinating. That the Arab nations said, we're not going to give citizenship to none of them. Why? Because they want this time bomb, that invented Palestinian nation, stay in our backyard and blow in our face every once in a while, just as it happened at the 7th of October. So they using these poor Arabs in Gaza as a ticking bomb against the Israelis. They don't care about their brothers and sisters. All they wish to see, because they're Muslims, and Islam cannot accept the sovereign Jewish state in the region. By the way, the Islam cannot accept Christian Britain as well, okay, or London and New York, but definitely not here in the Middle East. So you're absolutely right about that too. But I was not talking about the Arab states. I was talking about European states. I was talking about South America, and today we have this Somaliland that openly said that if Israel recognize, and it's a very serious state, by the way, they will let them land and take good care of them until they find their solution in a better place. Europe. There was place found in Europe to tens of millions of immigrations. Most of them are Muslims. I believe there's still room in London for few more. They definitely cannot stay here. Definitely not after they did at the 7th of October. And let me make myself very, very clear. At the 7th of October, this entity of Gaza, this Arab Muslim or Nazi Arab Muslim entity of Gaza, notice that I'm not saying a nation or state or Palestinians, whoever they are, okay? lost their right to breathe air in that place. Not just to rule or to stay.
All of them?
All of them. All of them. Okay? Why I'm saying all of them? Because every baby that will be born in Gaza today will be with his mother's milk will observe the hatred to all the Jews and will be the next Nukhba fighter. So if I'm letting them stay, I'm not being moral, I'm being immoral to my kids, to my women, to my people, okay? And the truth is, to the entire humanity. And I want to explain why I'm saying that. There's expectation, or at least there was an expectation since the Balfour Declaration from the people of the book that coming back to their homeland to show the world something about good and bad. Okay, the despair after World War I created expectation from the people of the book. Balfour said, maybe when the descendants of the prophets will come back to the hills of Judea, a new message of justice and faith and liberty will spread to the entire world, more or less. That was his words. There was an expectation after the big despair of World War I from us. For decades, every VIP that came to Israel, we took immediately to Yad Vashem to explain why do we in Israel have the right to exist, because look what happens to us when we don't have a state.
You're
okay,
about the Holocaust in Yad Vashem.
The Holocaust, the Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. So, and here it comes. We have it again. Okay, all the horrors of the Holocaust and more. These Azati guys. Okay, I'm not saying Hamas. It was the whole Gaza that attacked Israel. It's one of the biggest lies that we should put aside. It was the Gaza entity that attacked Israel at the 7th of October, okay?
There were people with the 7th of October, people came with flip-flops and canes and all of that.
They're still standing behind it, not only in Gaza, and in the whole Arab world, and definitely in Judea and Samaria, and definitely in Gaza proper, okay? It was not, and do not forget, they voted with tremendous numbers in favor of Hamas, so Hamas represent them. Okay, you cannot on one hand say I'm a nation, on the other hand saying it's not us, it's only this organization Hamas. Okay, so you're talking about an entity that is worse than Nazis, Moshe. Okay, why worse? Because the Nazis tried to hide what they did. Okay. These Islamo-Nazis at the 7th of October were very proud of what they did. They spread it all over the world on the net, right? Yes, and they did it with a religious enthusiasm. Okay, when I'm raping a woman, when her babies are being burnt, I'm doing something that Allah likes it. Allahu Akbar. Okay? So this is the kind of evil we deal with, worse than the Nazis, okay? And the whole world was watching the Jewish nation that's supposed to show what's good and bad, observe this evil, and let it stay, not doing what the Americans and the British army did after World War II. Not what the Royal Air Force and the American pilots did in Dresden and in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and actually on almost every city, burned to ashes, almost every city in Japan. When they did nothing to the Americans and to the British compared to what this Islamo-Nazis of Gaza did to us. So I think to let them stay today after 2 years is an immoral act of us. It's against the moral expectation from the Jewish nation. It shows that this kind of evil, yes, has a room in our world, and I think it's a and I'm ashamed of it. I'm ashamed of it.
Stephen, and if I'm
There's going to be a continuum of actions that will lead inevitably to a place that no population on the planet, Israel's included, will bear. So let's say hypothetically, you had the political will to do your plan. You make some offer to all of the Palestinians living in Israel proper, in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, and you say, here's $1 million for your Hamdallahs. What is it? I don't remember. Whatever the name was for the fit. Not
Allahu Akbar, did you say?
No. The
okay.
Hamallah. Well, it was larger than a family.
Clan, basically.
Humula, yeah, whatever. So you offer the money for the people. Let's say that 30% accept. My guess is that you're not going to be okay with 70% staying. What do you do at that point? Are you creating a single nation where all of those people are going to have the same vote? You can't create one nation where some people can vote and some people can't, because then the apartheid claims are going to come back. They're going to be stronger than ever. Are you going to have to force them out through uneasiness by cutting off their power and utilities, and then eventually by military force? You're just going to have basically a Nakba 2 or whatever. Nobody's going to be able to bear that, even domestically in Israel. Like, I just don't see this idea that, well, I'm sure they'll all leave willingly if we just open the borders and it'll be fine. I don't know if I just don't see that ever happening realistically.
Well, I have good news, Stephen. It happens anyhow. The percentage of the Jewish population is getting bigger and bigger compared to the Arab population between the river and the sea all the time. The demographic numbers are in favor of the Jews all the time. Actually, we're facing a miracle. The Jewish woman is the only woman in the West, and actually almost in the whole world, that's having more than 2.1 children. It is not, and the Arabs is having less and less. We are actually the I would say the only micro civilization. We are a kind of micro civilization of our own. We're not exactly the West, but the only micro civilization that growing today. And as I said before, it's much more than 30%. In Gaza, I think 100% wish to leave. In Judea and Samaria, it's over 60%. And if 30% may jump on the opportunity and take the money and go immediately. And with the rest of them, we have time. We'll keep on create a domestic policy that show them their way out and make it worthwhile for them to live and find their future in a better place. And yes, definitely, the whole land that was promised by us, by God, and being held by the Israeli army should be part of the sovereign Israeli state. It does not mean that we immediately have to give all our enemies Israeli citizenship. There's a difference between human rights and civilian rights. Trying to mix between them is another kind of a lie that being sold to the world. By the way, there's an example of a British sovereignty in Cyprus. I'm sure you're aware of that. I think there are about few tens of thousands of Cyprus people, who lived in Cyprus that live there under British control and cannot vote at the election of London. Okay, so and there are many other examples like that all over the world. So they can stay as a permanent residence if they choose, but it'll take a long time, maybe generation, until they convince us after such a long war that they are loyal enough to get to the Jewish state as a Jewish state, not a state of all citizens and all this nonsense that they're trying to say to sell themselves. A Jewish state, the homeland for the Jewish people, if they will prove loyalty. So yes, maybe in another generation or two, we'll consider giving them, after they'll prove it, citizenship. but we definitely not obligate to do it. Definitely not immediately. And to think that I can flip the facts like that because time was past and today things are different. No, they're not different. It's the same bad old conflict, the same bad old concepts, the same bad old wish to destroy Judaism. It's the same Islam, by the way. This is what we're dealing with. There is reality, Moshe. What can you do? And you have to face it, and you have to deal with it, not run away from it.
Stephen, may I ask you?
Could you please a question then? Because we can see it, and I think Stephen Destiny sees it clearly throughout social media, the movement against Israel, with people like Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, etc. My question is, do you think that people like Moshe, who are talking about justice to the Jewish people, this justice that we had from the Bible, can eradicate us completely?
That you said this justice can eradicate,
because
Yes, the same justice that gave us the 10 Commandments and the Promised Land.
The basic question of who the land belongs to should be solved. Before you deal with that question, you can't go around it anymore.
So again, Stephen, just to clarify the point, do you think that people like Moshe who believe in a higher justice to the Jewish people can cause, if they were in a leadership position, eradication of the state of Israel?
I mean, I think it could if it causes enough blowback. Also, I don't believe in this concept of like truth and justice as defining nations. I think that people who move there end up defining nations. You saw this in India when Modi was trying to get everybody to move up to Kashmir and buy houses and everything. The Jews understood it when they were trying to get a whole bunch of people to make Aliyah to the Levant, when they were trying to get everybody there. The Arabs understood it when Jews started to move in, and they started to move more Arabs into the land because people knew at the end of the day that if you have enough people in an area, they're going to say, well, these people can't be moved. They have to stay here. So, I mean, like, we can go back and historically make arguments, but I mean, like, as an American, I can't accept that, because if I were to accept the logic of that, then we would have to give our entire country back to the indigenous population here in the United States of America. I understand that these are arguments. All of these arguments are used to build positively in a certain direction. That if you can say, well, this is what's just, this is what's right, that's nice. It's like a building block in a direction towards a certain argument, but it's not enough. It doesn't get you all the way there. You can have the strongest arguments in the world, but it's like saying that we all know that rape is immoral, and we should never have people being raped, and we should never have children produced from rape. But when those children are born, you can't say, well, let's kill the children to undo the rape. It doesn't work that way. At that point, you're in a new world, a new reality, and you've got new things that you have to deal with. We have some level of factual disagreement, and I don't know if there's any way we can resolve that. Like, if it was the case that you could just simply pay some amount of money and all of the Palestinians or a large chunk of them would leave, I mean, I think that would probably be the best for everybody. If the people there would choose to leave, I'm sure the Jewish people in Israel would be happy. I'm sure if the people accept the money and they leave, they would be happy. I mean, that would be a simple way out. I feel like if the solution was that easy, I think we would have discovered that by now, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, so that factual disagreement is there. The justice and historical arguments can be made, but I think they can only push so far. You have to deal with the realities that exist on the ground now. I keep hearing this thing said, and I hear it a lot, especially from people that live in the West Bank and Judea and Samaria, the Jewish people that live there, this idea that it's the same Islam, it's the same Arabs today that it was in the past. I don't think that's true at all. I think if that was the case, I think on October 7th, you would have seen the 2 million people and the 2 million Palestinians in Israel, the 2 million Arabs in Israel. I think they would have rose up and fought against the state, but they didn't on October 7th. You would have seen people in the West Bank rise up and fight. They didn't really on October 7th. So I think that people are meaningfully different. You didn't get like the third intifada. That didn't happen like it did from 2000 to 2005. So, I mean, I think the people there are different, but yeah, I just don't see this as a very realistic solution, but maybe there's some factual disagreement there that I don't know how to resolve. Like if a bunch of people would accept money and leave, I mean, that would probably be beneficial to everybody, but I just don't see that being possible. And absent that, you're not going to be able to force that many people out of the state of Israel into other lands. And the worst case scenario for Israel there is to start to lose support from the leadership of the surrounding Arab states. That would be I think that would be catastrophic for Israel. Yeah.
Okay. The fact that what they call the Israeli Arabs actually started those riots at 2 years before, by the way. Okay. You're wrong about that, Stephen. The fact that they did not participate and immediately join forces with Hamas shows nothing. They definitely see themselves as part of the same. If you're asking the Arabs in all the surveys, even Israeli Arabs, they actually think that the 7th of October was, most of them believe it was a good act. Let's put it this way.
But again, Moshe, just to clarify your stance, do you think that doctors, a lot of them are Arabs, basically, and those same people that I'm going every day to the train station and grab me a coffee, and they make me a coffee, do you think they are a threat to the state of Israel? And do you think they can cause harm to me?
Yes. And they're talking about it. Just today, when you look as individuals, they're very, very good people. Some of them are the best people that I can imagine. But collectively, they see you as their occupier, also in Tel Aviv. Okay, don't fool yourself. That's what we're dealing with. And I'm not talking about the Arabs in Shechem and Ramallah. I'm talking about the Arabs in the West Bank, okay, as you call it, Judea and Samaria. I'm talking about the Arabs in Yafo, in Jaffa, and what they call Israeli Arabs, okay? They all see your national existence. Listen to their Knesset members, to their representatives, how they talk. They don't accept the Jewish sovereignty on whatever is left. Mm-hmm. After Oslo, they don't accept it. Don't you? They talking to you. They very open. I must say in their favor. They telling the truth.
But again, Moshe, I think it's not a whole movement. I think a lot of them are individuals. Like, for example, if I voted for the right, it doesn't say that I voted for Bibi or I support Smotrich and I support Ben-Gvir in his decisions. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, did you see one Arab Knesset member? Forget about leaders in the entire Arab world. A Knesset member, okay, that simply condemn the horrors of the 7th of October without talking from both sides of his mouth. Okay?
No, I didn't.
Not even one. So what are you talking about?
Okay.
So what are you talking about? Now, I do agree with Stephen that, as they say, you don't go to buy your groceries with ideology, okay? Okay? Or with justice, or with historical facts. You have to deal with reality. I definitely agree with that. But at the 7th of October, the entire world was fascinated from what it saw. Okay? Fascinated. The entire world expected Israel to turn over all the desks, break all the rules, march all these 800,000, whatever left from this Muslim Nazi entity in Gaza to El Arish. The Egyptians would not say a word, by the way. The Hamas was just an Iranian and Egyptian proxy, by the way. All the weapon that slaughtered you at the 7th of October came from Egypt. And you and I know very well that if you forgot one bullet in your bag after your army service, and went for hiking in Sinai, you would have gone to jail in Cairo, right? Yeah. They know how to find weapon. And here comes boats full of weapons, RPGs, and everything that slaughtered you in the 7th of October to the ports of Alexandria in Egypt, and from there under the tunnels with all the help of the Egyptians. So yes, it should have become, at the 8th of October, an Egyptian problem.
Not an Israel.
Not an Israeli problem. And the whole world would agree after what they saw. But what happened? So what I'm saying is, yes, timing is important. I accept that sometimes you can do things, sometimes you can't. But before you even getting to deal with reality, you have to clarify to yourself and to the entire world who's right and who's wrong, who's holding the justice in his hand, and who is the real occupier over here. Okay, we took over so-called Palestinian land. When did we occupy? As far as I remember, the last occupation of the West Bank was a Jordanian occupation in 1948. Okay? Israel fought against Jordan, who started a war in 1967 after they took Judea and Samaria, the Jordanians. There was no Palestinians in the show. Where for God's sake, Israel took so-called Palestinian one grain of land. It's nonsense, okay? Now these people, okay, invented nation is being used as Stephen just told us, by the entire Arab nation as a time bomb again against Israel, and Israel is playing the game instead of saying the truth. So if I'm saying through the whole time, this is my land, if you will not behave, a day will come, okay, and you will not be there, okay? You better behave. Then when the day comes and and you get your opportunity to do that, you do that. But instead of that, we decided to stick to the Oslo concepts that blew up in our face a million times before, with buses blowing up and restaurants being blown and for 30 years already, okay? Instead of realize that having a policy based on lie do not work. Use the opportunity that history gives you to bring back justice to the map.
Steven.
I don't know what else to say.
I understand Destiny, but let's just clarify to a point. You're saying basically it's out of the realm of possibility what Moshe is talking about?
Yeah, this is always the feeling I get whenever I talk to Palestinians and whenever I talk to, or I guess our term for them is settlers, but especially people that live in Judea, Samaria, and the West Bank, is both sides seem to have this concept that it's fantastical, and I just don't see it ever happening. You know, I'll talk for the Palestinian equivalent. It should be one nation where every single individual citizen gets one vote, and also there are anywhere from 5 to 10 million Palestinians that need to come back to Israel for the right of return that also get to vote. So the Jewish people would be like anywhere from 20 to 40% of the population, depending on who you talk to, which is obviously also fantastical. But I just view these as like practical non-starters, unless there's like very real work that happens in that direction. So, in this case, it would be conversations with surrounding Arab leaders to make them, more palatable to the idea of other Arabs from inside Israel moving there, or conversations with the Palestinians that live within the Israeli territory, the West Bank, Gaza, Israel proper. Unless these conversations have started to happen and you see progress in that direction, I see this as being a total non-starter. It just doesn't seem to be realistic at all, which I think Moshe identifies correctly is a ticking time bomb, and you're just waiting for more. For more intifadas, basically, for another second intifada, for another October 7th. And, as it stands now, I would say it's inevitable, right? Because the conditions that created the second intifada, I would argue were the same conditions that created October 7th, and they're the same conditions that will create some future thing, which is basically a people that feel dispossessed, whether you think it's justified or not, in an area where they are increasingly cut off from external support, and their external support has changed from, as much as we might not have liked, Nasser or anything else, but it changed from Egypt and Syria and Jordan to now Iran and maybe the Houthis. And as that support becomes more and more radical and the people feel increasingly hopeless, you're just going to get more and more terrorist attacks. And, what are you going to do? So, I feel like I would want to see real movement in that direction that's also trying to incorporate the political realities of the surrounding Arab states, and then Western countries as well that make that possible. But until that happens, it just seems kind of fantastical, I think.
Okay, so look, Stephen, this you're looking for what you call a realistic way of thinking, and basically what you mean is you're looking for a Western way of thinking. Okay, there's what I see here. If I may talk in your name for a second, you're saying that what I see here is a national conflict on the same piece of land. And when this is the problem, you come to a kind of you divide this piece of land before these two nations or people, and that's how you solve that problem. But we tried, Stephen, okay? And as I said before, Israel gave it, against of my will, by the way, it was a big mistake, the best shot in Oslo. So, and look where this realistic way of mind brought us, to the 7th of October. Because the Israeli government did not listen to me. So we got the 7th of October. The 7th of October is a direct result of the Oslo process. And later on, the disengagement plan to try to go through the whole way, give it to them anyhow.
In 2005.
That's right, 10 years later. So this kind of Western concepts that you call realistic proved itself to be the most unrealistic concept, an unrealistic solution.
Because it's the Middle East?
Because it's not a territorial conflict. It's not a national conflict. It's a religious conflict. Okay, this is what it is. You cannot run away from it. It's a religious conflict. That's why Islam is winning today against the entire West. Okay? Because the West will not admit that it's facing a religious war. Okay? This is what it is. So the question is, if staying alive, Moshe, here on this piece of land is realistic or not. If we're not willing to face what we really having here, we won't be able to live here, and it doesn't matter how strong we will be, the IDF will be, and how our technology will be advanced, and so on. Okay, we have to know who the enemy is, and fight it. The right way. The fact that the real solution was given to us on a silver platter by the President of the United States, okay? And we did not jump on the opportunity and solve the problem, proves that we don't have a problem with the so-called Palestinians, or with international pressure, with the Biden administration and so on, pressure from the world. We have a problem with ourselves. It's a war of identities inside the Israeli society that reflects on the whole story. I don't know how much Stephen interested in what's going on inside the Israeli society, but the biggest intellectual mind behind the Oslo process, okay? I'm talking about Dr. Ron Pundak, okay? Who was the architect, the intellectual architect behind the Oslo process, said when he was asked, it failed, it brought tremendous bloodshed, not peace. So he said, quote, "The Oslo process was not a failure, it was a success, because it did not meant to bring peace. It meant to create Israelism of the state of Israel. It meant to create an Israelism of the Israeli society instead of Judaism of the state of society." You see, we brought this bloodshed on ourselves because we are running away from our own identity, trying to be a nation like all the nations, normal nation, Israelis instead of Jews, and therefore, as an Israelis, lost the ability to say this land belongs to us, our justification. And that's why we ran to the Oslo agreement, and that's why we got the 7th of October. I disagree that the situation cannot be solved, but I will say it again, it cannot be solved without looking straight to reality and say the truth to ourselves and to our enemy. It's not your place.
Destiny, you can react to it, but also to add, you're saying that the religious element in the conflict isn't the main thing, right?
I mean, again, I guess he's just come down to different factual claims. So like this idea that there's some intractable conflict between the world of Islam and the world of Judaism, or Islam versus the West or whatever else. I feel like this concept of Islamic unity is as much a myth pushed by people who are scared of Muslims as much as it was a myth pushed by Muslims to try to pretend that they had more worldwide unity than they actually did. Like nothing is more funny than Hamas calling for, global Islamic Jihad against the state of Israel. And then meanwhile, you have Jordan intercepting missiles from Iran as they're trying to shoot them, into the state of Israel, or, Nasser claiming that there would be a unified Muslim world that would unite and fight against Israel. But even in 47 and 48, like they stopped once they had their territory carved out for them. Jordan took as far as they could into the West Bank. Egypt took as far as they could into the Gaza Strip, and they basically all kind of stopped. Even through the 6-day war, even through Yom Kippur, you had the Jordanian king was flying out and talking with Golda Meir and meeting with the Jews and having conversations back and forth to see, what a future thing would look like, between these two states. And you had peace with Egypt, you had peace with Jordan, and you've got the Abraham Accords and everything else. And I don't see this unified Islamic enemy that is coming up to fight against the Jews the same way that Israel does. Sometimes I feel when and maybe it's easier for me, I guess, being in the West, but sometimes it feels like, especially people who have been alive longer, older Israelis are trapped in this trauma, almost like this mental Nakba or whatever from 48, from 67, from 73, where they feel like the whole world is coming down on them and their entire country is about to slip into chaos or destruction at any point in time. But then when you look at it from the rest of the world, it's like, I don't understand, where this comes from. I remember traveling north. I don't remember the city we went to, but I was with,
in Israel,
yeah. Just chatting with so many Israelis and hearing like the seven fronts, we're beset on all sides and it's going to be destruction any moment now. And then looking back, and it's like every single Hezbollah pager has been blown up. Nasrallah is killed. All of the leadership in Hamas has been killed. I'm seeing pictures of Sinwar dying like a dog in his apartment, in the basement or whatever. I'm seeing it's just like every single enemy of Israel. Assad is gone, has been defeated, destroyed, has been fled, exiled, has been bombed in other countries in Syria and Qatar. And it's like, I feel like Israel is not on this precipice of destruction. I don't think there's a unified Islamic Jihad that's just right around the corner and it's about to come and destroy Israel. I don't believe that the Arab or Palestinian citizens of Israel or the West Bank are anywhere near as radicalized as Moshe seems to think. I don't think there was ever a third intifada. I don't think they're looking to create a third intifada. We can talk about the failures of Oslo, but I mean, from what I've heard of Ramallah in the past and then visiting it recently, the Palestinian Authority has had some success in bringing a lot of these areas, under control and making them more peaceful, more pacified, easier for even people like me to visit and walk around in. This idea that, and even the idea that like Oslo was given its best shot, I mean, like that's not really true, right? You had continual expansion of settlements still, and I know it wasn't against the deal. You had Arafat who refused to ever tell people to stop, blowing themselves up and killing Israeli citizens. I think Oslo 2 is a step in the right direction. Obviously, it didn't get anybody where they wanted to ultimately, which is why the second intifada happened. But just throwing away Yeah, I guess I'm just speaking against this idea. You know, there was peace with Egypt happened in exchange for the Sinai. Peace with Jordan happened. I don't think that this is an intractable religious conflict that can never be solved because of the religious differences between both sides. You know, the Islamic world is not united, and Jews have made peace with Muslims in the past, even with the elections in Egypt in 2011, right? It's not like you saw Egypt break their peace with Israel and invade. So. Yeah, I don't know. That's the view that I have. I feel like the conflict is not as intractable as people want to make it seem like sometimes, and I feel like when people make it sound intractable, it's just because they want to get more than they could otherwise with a negotiated peace, rather than just completely conquering one side and throwing them out.
How you would react to it?
I think the historical facts are very clear. The minute the Israeli state was declared after the decision of the UN in 1948, five Arab states started a war against Israel, and the Israeli Arabs, or the Israeli who lived at Palestine before the creation of Israel, of course, joined them. It was the other way around. First, it was civil war, you can call it, between about 600,000 Jews that were here and 600,000 Arabs that was inside the land, and 5 Arab countries joined them. So you cannot say that they don't join forces. You're absolutely right, Stephen, that between the Shias and the Sunnis, there's an ongoing war and hatred, that only the hatred against the Jews can make some kind of unity between them. I think we have the right to be a little bit suspicious, okay, about what they planning to do to us. Now, I don't like the argument that I'm just using here, okay? I don't like to say, hey, they want to kill us, so we have no choice. No, it's not my argument, even though it's true. Okay, this is not my argument. I will never tell you that if they would have won peace, I would give them my land. No, even if they would have come with flowers and hugging and kissing, they would not get 1 grain of my holy promised land. Okay, I'm talking about justice here, not who's stronger and who's weaker, and how they behaved and how I behave. This is my language. What I'm just trying to say, that when you think that this language is not practical, you're wrong, because this is the only language that is practical and would have solved the problem here in the Middle East long time ago. Because we try to be practical, because we try to run away from justice, because we try to run away from the language of faith, from the reason we got this land to begin with from God, and later on with the recognition in the Balfour Declaration and the League of Nations in 1922, because of the same reason as I explained before, because we tried to run away for kind of a secular language, realistic as you call it, the problem was never solved. But the real question is, why? Why? Why, when the Americans giving you the opportunity to, yes, on the most humane way, solve that problem? Trump promised to build them, how we called it, Riviera on the seashore of Gaza. The whole Arab world raised up against it, and Trump withdrew from it. Saudi Arabia was against it. Okay. Why Israel did not participate and pushed for it? When you really looking to the stages of the war, and there were miracles in this war, let me tell you, Stephen, if Hezbollah would join the same day, and if the Iranians would have shot those missiles the same day of the 7th of October, they could have erased the Israeli state from the map. Okay, we were in shambles that day, and what happened with the beepers? Of course, the Israeli Mossad and the Israeli Air Force did tremendously good, but yet the fact that it worked so no one believed that the beepers will cause the immediate defeat of the entire Hezbollah and basically flip the direction of the war. No one believes such a complicated war against Iran with the Israeli Air Force will succeed without losing one plane. Okay, this is a miracle. This is a miracle. To my belief, it's the hand of God. I mean, God gave us, after we did every realistic step that we should have done militarily, okay, the opportunity to become a regional power in the Middle East. And the American President Trump wanted us to be. He wants to have a serious force here, to become a serious force, a regional force here, that he can lean on to make business with to stable the place. And we decided to remain in our narrow community kind of way of thinking instead of a state way of thinking, inviting the Americans to take responsibility of Gaza instead of doing it by ourselves. Okay, so again, I think that the solution is between the Israelis and themselves. It's not about what the world will accept. It's not about the ability to convince the Arabs to find their future in a better place. No, it's not about that. It's about inner identity conflict inside the Israeli society. I actually wrote a book about it. It's called Israel is Just the Beginning. It's, by the way, #1 bestseller in Amazon right now on Middle East studies. I hope you'll read it, Stephen, because it's give you a deeper understanding of what really the conflict is all about.
Yeah, I guess. You know what? It's kind of funny. I guess you know what I kind of feel like. I feel like there's a section of Israel that reminds me of Arafat. I feel like Arafat became popular because, God, was it I'm trying to think if it was pre-64. There was a big battle. Some Israeli contingent had crossed into, I don't know if it was in the West Bank or in the Jordan proper.
On the
Jordanian Air Force.
Jordanian, yes.
They intercepted, and it was really the Jordanian military that had won, but they decided to give all the credit to, I think, Arafat and his Fedayeen fighters and everything. And this is when Arafat first gained all this popularity. And he made a name for himself as being a military leader. And Arafat, not in my mind, it's just true. Arafat just never had the mind for politics. He liked fighting, he liked flying around the world and being a celebrity, and he just was never the person to be the leader for the Palestinian people to make peace. He was a military general. Even in that stupid picture with Clinton and Rabin, he's still wearing his whatever combat uniform outfit or whatever,
and a gun, by the way. He had a gun all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Or maybe yeah. But then when I look at, like, even listening to you talk about, Israel was on the precipice of destruction on October 7th, it reminds me of hearing, like, almost like Arafat speaking. Israel didn't win or survive October 7th because of their military strength. I think they did it because of their political victories. Again, when Iran went to attack Israel with missiles, like, surrounding Arab states were assisting with the intelligence and with the interception. You had all of these political relationships that have been built. You have 2 million. How many more Arabs live in Israel proper now compared to in 2000 during the Second Intifada? All of these Arabs that lived in the state of Israel that didn't rise up and engage in mass terrorism. All of these people in the West Bank that didn't rise up and join with the people of Gaza or the Hamas attacks. Like, it just, none of this stuff happened, and it wasn't because of the military might of Israel. Because say what you will about Israel's military accomplishments, I still don't know what happened. I don't know if you guys know what happened, but October 7th, there was just a massive failure that day in terms of response, and there was so much opportunity for this for this united Arab, united Muslim, united anti-Jewish enemy to rise up and do something horrible, and it just didn't happen. And I think that speaks volumes to the amount of social and political success that's happened in Israel. And I think to look back on October 7th and to say, well, this is why we have to be militarily strong. This is why we need to fight and have the strongest military and blow everybody up and get rid of our enemies. Like, well, that wasn't the reason why I think that conflict went the way that it did. Now, obviously, October 7th itself was a horrible, atrocious disaster on a lot of different levels. But it wasn't the destruction of Israel. There was no point where this was even a realistic possibility. There might have been a fear of it, but the reality was at the end of the day that wasn't going to happen. And yeah, I guess when I hear this trauma, this generational trauma, when Israelis speak about the existential threats to Israel. But I feel like, yeah, the political victories that Israel's had with the rest of the Arab and Muslim world shouldn't be discounted. And I think that's where Israel thrives today, and to walk back on that and to just look militarily.
But just to counter your point, Stephen, the thing is, a month before October 7th, the leaders of Hamas met. They tried to do an October 7th. Can you imagine if together they would have attacked with Hezbollah and also with Iran, and it wasn't just Hamas? Don't you think it would have eradicated the state of Israel?
I understand what you're saying, but like this is why I view things as geopolitical rather than religious. Like, I think Hezbollah was more interested and was more concerned with what was going on in Syria and working with Assad. I think that the Houthi family, these people don't care at all about Palestinians. That's a lie that's told by Palestinians and sometimes by Israelis, depending on how much fear they're trying to drum up. The Houthis don't care about what's going on with the Palestinian genocide. They're not attacking ships because they're trying to help Palestinians. They're doing it because Iran is helping them a little bit with weapons. And I think begrudgingly, they're kind of like dragged along into this whatever Palestinian conflict. Nobody in Yemen cares what's actually happening in Israel. And, Hamas, they're fighting and they care, but, they're doing whatever they can to get support from anybody they can. And really, Iran was the only one that could actually help them. Yeah, it's a fragmented world out there. And again, like this is we're far from the Islamic Jihad, the global Islamic Jihad that these guys are praying for. And it's not happening. Even when we talk about, we talk about Sunni Shia, the Ayatollah in Iran, is a Shia sect or whatever of Islam, and I'm pretty sure Hamas are technically a Sunni sect of Islam. Like, they're not even on the right, Islamic territory or Islamic lines to be fighting religiously. So yeah, that world is so much more fragmented, I feel, than we're representing in this conversation. And everybody's so concerned with their own geopolitical stuff that they didn't even have the ability to come together and fight against the terrorist Jewish state of Israel. They couldn't even muster it on October 7th and afterwards.
Moshe.
Well, the second common name today in the Muslim world is Yahya Sinwar. Okay, they admire what he did. They see him as the new Salah ad-Din or something like that. Okay, admire.
Basically,
he's the new Salah ad-Din. He is you can call it the holy Shahid. And as I said, it's amazing. After Muhammad, he's the most common name in the whole Muslim world today. One of the most, if not the most, sell books, common books are being sold in Egypt is the Mein Kampf, Hitler's Mein Kampf translated to Arabic. The population of Jordan hates Jews maybe more than anybody else. Okay?
But Stephen says they intercepted missiles with the Irans.
Now, I'm not. I feel uncomfortable even react to that because it was only done under tremendous pressure of the Americans. There was no real need for that, by the way. It was political. Israel proved later on that it can deal with the Iranians very well without them. It was politics. It was not a real wish to help the Israelis against the Iranians. It was interest.
Wait, can I say something real quick? Just as
of course, Stephen.
Because I said this earlier, and I feel like Israel is not is sometimes very insensitive to the political realities of the people around them. We can say that it was just politics, but politics is real, and I feel like that was important. Like I think it says
I agree.
something.
I agree. Politics is real, but when reality give those people the opportunity to erase Israel, they will take on it. Okay, now basically what you're saying is, don't worry, it's not so terrible. You know what? I'm not willing to gamble on the future of my people. I'm not willing to gamble on one Jewish Israeli getting hurt, on one child getting hurt.
What happened to your grandson?
My grandson Yair was killed in a war in Gaza, a war that he should not be being sent to. The way to win this war should have been simply close the supply of water. If you want to drink a cup of water, come out of the tunnels with hostages.
And blocking also humanitarian aid.
This is not a humanitarian aid, okay? This is a direct support to your enemy, to Hamas.
But not everyone.
But as I explained at the beginning, I don't do any separation between Gaza and Hamas. I didn't see any humanitarian aid that the American or the British Army sent to Germany during the war. Okay, no aid. We should. The problem it took 2 years to finish this strange round in Gaza. In the 6-day war, it took half a day to take over Gaza. Okay, 2 years. Okay, to finish up and the job was not finished is simply because the Israelis did not want to win.
So again, just to recap your opinion, Stephen, you're basically saying that not all the people are Hamas, and the Palestinian people are different than the Hamas people, unlike what Moshe says, basically. And what he says is basically not realistic.
There's a level of nuance here that Israelis should be able to appreciate this, because people in desperate times will turn to people that might be unsavory in other aspects. So in Ukraine, they used to celebrate a guy called Bandera, who fought alongside more with the Nazis than with the Soviets. But I mean, if you go to Eastern Europe, man, these people got really messed up by the Soviets, and they hated the Soviets. And even if that meant fighting alongside the Nazis, sometimes they were, whatever, in order to fight off the Soviets from invading their country. And then some people look at that and go, wow, well, you were friends with Nazis. Like, how can you do that? Well, it's more complicated than that. It's not so much that they like Nazis, more so that they hated Soviets. Same thing sometimes. I'll hear, well, you guys had your terrorist factions prior to the formation of Israel, your Irgun, and what did you do? You elected one of their leaders as your prime minister. You had Menachem Begin, as your prime minister. He used to be a terrorist. And it's like, sure, kind of, yeah. And I would say that I think the Irgun engaged in stuff that was akin to terrorism. It's weird to call it terrorism in that time when everybody's killing each other and doing stuff, but to say that, like, well, it's a terrorist nation because Begin was the prime minister, when Begin, was the guy who was prime minister when peace when Egypt was made, I feel like it's just a bit reductionist, I guess. Like, people resort to a lot of stuff when times seem desperate. It might not always be good, but I mean, it's political realities. We talk about the elections of Hamas, and, my understanding is that was largely in response to the failures of Oslo II, that it felt like there was just no progress on any final negotiated peace, and the, Fatah, the PLO, whatever else were worthless. They weren't getting anything done. So, maybe Hamas will get something done. And so people turn to that in the meantime, and it's not good. But I don't think it comes from a bloodlust or from a hatred of the Jewish people. I think it comes from desperation. And that's how I would view a lot of those types of leadership elections, yeah.
Well, I think you hit an important point. You say it comes from desperation, and I totally disagree, Stephen. It comes from hope. A hope that we planned in their minds and hearts to destroy us. people think that terrorists come from starvation, from lowest parts of society. No. Most of the, when it's really checked, and not only in Israel, also terrorists against America, okay? You see, Bin Laden, for example, he was a billionaire, right? You see that it's not it doesn't come from a despair, it comes from hope. When they see weakness, and when I'm saying weakness, I'm not talking about the military weakness, I'm talking about the moral weakness. They believe that you are just like weak, like a spider net, as the Hezbollah said, and they will be able to destroy you. So maybe that the deep, different way of thinking that we have. You think it's about a despair, and I think it's about hope. What creates terror is definitely the Arab terror against us is not a despair, it is the hope.
But Moshe, just to interrupt because it's important, also socio-economical things can influence society. Not having ports, not having money, all of that. It can make a society act in survival.
That was exactly the concept of Oslo, Moshe, okay? They will have a lot of money, they will have a good life, and they'll leave us alone and we'll make business together, okay? It didn't work. There are tens of thousands of trucks. There's more food right now in Gaza than ever before. Mm-hmm. Okay, do they love you? Do they stop? Do they claim they're gonna put down their weapon and start playing a different game? It's not about a despair. It's about a hope. We should understand. We should understand that. I just have to clarify one thing that I feel obligated, because of something that Stephen said, and this is something that cannot be. With all due respect, Stephen, and seriously, I have a respect to you. Any trying to compare the Irgun fighters to these monsters, there's no moral clarity in this kind of understanding. Okay, you will not find anywhere in history a fighter of the Etzel, the Irgun, who raped and slaughtered kids and chopped off their heads and burned them in front of their mothers. No, there's no. You cannot say that. I'm sorry. I agree. By the way, that I don't like the word terrorist. Okay, they fighting what they call a national fight. They don't have air force. They have terror force, and they're using it. And that's why, by the way, they should not bring to court. Okay? It's not on that level. It's not a civilian problem that we have over here. We have a war over here. And it's a war against us and against our right to exist as a free nation on our promised land and only land. This is what it is. It's not a conflict of despair. It's not an economical conflict, okay? It's a religious conflict. It's a moral conflict. It's a conflict about justice, about the very basic question, who this land belonged to. Now, let me tell you a story, Stephen, and you'll be surprised, okay? When I became a Knesset member over 10 years ago, okay, with the Likud party, I was the deputy speaker of the Knesset. I had many discussions with the Arab Knesset members who I respected very much, very intelligent people. Okay, and they liked to talk to me because, as you see, I talk openly. I don't mess around. I don't smear the issue. I talk directly to the issue. And one of those very vocal Arab Knesset members asked to talk to me alone. His name is Isawi Frej, by the way.
He's a Druze, no?
No, Arab.
Arab.
Arab. I'll tell you a story about the Jews as well. It's interesting what you said. And he said to me, Feiglin, can I ask you a question? I said, go ahead. He said, this land of Israel that you're talking about all the time, where is its borders? So I told him, look, I'm a modest man, I told him. From the Nile to the Euphrates, I told him. The whole promised land is mine. Never heard such a thing from an Israeli before. And he said, and who said so? So I pointed to the ceiling of the Knesset, and it was just him and I, no one else. I pointed we were sitting and drinking coffee together. I pointed to the ceiling of the Knesset. I told him, God. Now you got to believe me, Stephen. Before I took my hand down, this Arab Knesset member that will never tell you that discussion ever happened, okay? Openly. But believe me, that's exactly how it took place, okay? Before I took my hand down, he said, you're right. And with you, I'll manage. But, he continued, you're a liar, he tells me. So I asked him, we're sitting together, first time, drinking coffee, why are you calling me a liar? It's not nice. So he said, because you're not a real Zionist. The Zionists, he meant the new kind of Jews, the Israelis instead of Jews, they are just colonialists that came from Europe in 1948 and took over my land. But you're something else. You belong here. With you, I'll manage. And you know why he said that? Because I spoke in the name of God. I told him more than that. I spoke his language. I told him more than that. I told him, I don't understand. Those Zionists that every time offers you half of their land, you decide to take the other half. You, I told him, you, Mr. Knesset member Frej, if you would have been there when Ben Gurion declared the state of Israel in the Tel Aviv Museum in 1948, if you would have been there, you wouldn't take an axe and go in and slaughter everybody. If you would have declared the state of Israel just in the borders of the museum, you'd have gone in and kill all the Jews over there. He said, you're right. So I told him, explain to me why. I'm talking about from the Nile to the Euphrates, and with me, you're saying you'll manage. And these Zionists willing to negotiate, willing to be realistic, as you say, practical, as you say, with them, you'll continue to have a war always. Okay? What's the difference between me and those Zionists? And that's what he told me. Because I'm talking the language of the region, Stephen. I'm not talking your language. I'm talking their language. Okay? With me, they'll manage. With me, there'll be peace. With me, being connected to my roots and to my Jewish identity, and to the reason why I came back after 2,000 years to this promised land, and to the vision that because of that vision, I got this Balfour Declaration to begin with, okay? I did not forget my mission to the entire humanity as a nation. Once we, the Israelis, will be connected again to our Jewish roots, there'll be peace over here. And the whole world will accept it. The basic, say, those who blessed you will be blessed, and those who cursed you will be cursed, is known by the entire humanity. They want to be blessed. Look what happening now with Iran. They're being dried from water. If they would not fight Israel, if they would not curse Israel, if they would have blessed Israel and cooperate with Israel, they would have thrived now. You think there's one Iranian that don't understand that? They understand that. So The real solution is to talk the language of the region. The real solution is not running away from your identity, but connect to identity and to your mission and to the deep understanding also in the Muslim world that represents the truth that they also believe in.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have the same response to it. Yeah, I think.
Understood. Then let's talk about the point of contention that I see between you, Stephen, and also Moshe, which is basically the settlers. And you're saying basically some of the settlers are doing problems in Israel, right, Stephen?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I feel like it's just a continuation of my earlier point where it's just short-term gains at the expense of long-term stability, that there's not like a real, like the settlers understand the same thing that we were arguing about earlier, is that it's really a people that give you a moral right to a land. And if you have enough people there, nobody's going to move them out or kick them off. And that's just the reality of it, which is why so many settlers, I think, want to move out further and further, into their historic lands of Judea and Samaria or the West Bank, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, because once there are so many people there, they're not, no matter who you are, you're not going to move them out without some massive war, genocide, or whatever else. So, yeah, but I mean, to try to keep moving people there without having any kind of understanding of what the final terms are, I think is a dangerous game.
How do you look at the hilltop youth? Like some people say they're the radical settlers.
Are these the guys that will take a goat or whatever and then park in the middle of someplace and wait for an Arab to try to move it, and then they go out and they try to fight with them? Are like these types of people?
It's like that, yeah.
Listen. If people want to go out and fight over there, that's fine. I don't have any sympathy for them if they get killed. I don't have any sympathy for. I don't know. It's just dumb stuff. I don't know. I met some of these crazy people. Or maybe that might be mean to say. I guess I don't know. Do you know? Are you familiar with the settlement of Yitzhar?
Of course.
Yeah, Moshe knows.
Yeah, we were trying to go to Nablus, and a couple of these crazy dudes came out and stopped us and called the IDF and forced them to kick us out. And because I don't know, because they didn't even like the fact that we were there. So I don't know, the people that there's. You know this, obviously, but in the West, like there are different types of settlers. Like all these people that live on the Green Line I don't think anybody cares about them. I don't even think the Palestinians in the West Bank care much about them. I think that in any negotiated peace, if there were a two-state solution, which I understand Moshe is opposed to, but like you wouldn't be really talking about these major settlements on the Green Line. But the ones that get like really deep in, or maybe you're the 1/10 of Hebron or whatever, or your people in Yitzhar, these steeper ones, these people, I guess in my view, are a bit more radicalized, or maybe you would even agree with that, but you'd say they're radicalized in a good direction. But yeah, any type of fighting like that, when you don't have a final negotiated thing, I feel is just pushing that ticking time bomb along, obviously.
Think about those radical settlers that settled the Galil in the 20s, in 1920, like Rachel, the famous poet, who settled the Moshava of Kinneret at the time, and Trumpeldor, who was a radical settler up north. And these radical settlers that created 11 outposts in the Negev in 1947. And because of them, we have the Negev today. So I love the people of Yitzhar. I love my brothers and sisters that giving their life to hold our land from being taken away by those Arabs.
But again, to add, Moshe, Stephen, when he came, was not an Arab; he was a civilian.
Stephen is a nice guy. Stephen, I live in a settlement as well, named Karnei Shomron. You're always welcome to have a cup of coffee with me in my settlement in Karnei Shomron. I don't know exactly what happened there. Now, you know that when people live, no, seriously speaking, when people live in a very rough situation, when they don't feel that the army is protecting them, they become suspicious, and sometimes they don't react, in a polite way. But it doesn't change the fact that if you look at the list of people who were killed from Arab terrorists in Judea and Samaria, and try to compare it with any kind of list from the other side, you'll find nothing. How many people, Arab, got killed from Jews in Judea and Samaria in the last 20 years?
I don't know. Good question.
No, 1, 2, and I'm totally against it. Give me names.
Wait, there's no way that number is correct. No.
Yeah,
Can you give me now? Check it out. Check it out.
But okay.
How many Arabs were killed by Jews in Judea and Samaria in the last 10 years?
Okay, continue though.
Ask the same question the other way, verse versa, and see the difference.
Okay, but continue.
Also, we say 20 years. If we go back 30 years, when
30 years.
I mean, that shooting by was that it?
In Hebron. You're right.
Patriarchs.
You're
By
right.
Goldstein. Yeah.
Right. Goldstein was the dog who bit, a human being who bit the dog. Okay, something against the all the rules. But when an Arab kills a Jew, that's acceptable because we're used to it.
Okay.
So,
Can I ask a question?
If you ask the question vice versa, how many Jews were killed by what you call Palestinian terror in Judea and Samaria in the last year, you'll get some serious numbers, I'm sure. Okay. In names that I remember, neighbors of mine. So to compare to say that there's a Jewish terror is another lie. It's a false. It's not true.
Okay, Steven.
I'm kind of curious. Where does this? Well, let me just to stake a thing in the ground because people are going to scream at me if I don't say anything. I'm pretty sure there's way more death.
By the way, I see you have rifles over there in the back.
Yeah, I'm a gun-loving American. Yeah,
oh, that's good. I'm all for it. I wish in Israel they would have let us have guns in our homes.
Yeah. The what was I? Oh, I'm pretty sure there's more death on the Arab side than there is on the Israeli side on the West Bank when it comes to conflict that happens over there.
What?
I understand we might disagree on that, but
what? Again, go to the numbers.
Sure.
These are facts.
We might disagree. I just want to put my second ground. But then the second thing is you mentioned something that's interesting to me because I've actually never heard this claim before, and I've heard a lot of extreme claims on both sides. The 2 million number cited in Gaza is quite an important one. Yes. You claim that there's only 800,000 people living in Gaza.
Yes.
What leads you to believe that the number is so far different? Yeah.
Because the only real scientific research about the demography in Judea and Samaria and Gaza was done by a crew, American-Israel crew that worked together. It was led by Yoram Ettinger. And if you look for it on the web, you'll see all the numbers and the way he counted, and it's done very thoroughly, scientific way. These are the numbers.
Okay, I'll look that up at some point. I've never heard that before.
But Steven, do you think that the Western world cannot work with the settlers, like for example with the Ben-Gvirs and the Smotriches?
I see Trump as more extreme than Ben-Gvir, So what do you mean that the world cannot live with? Once you represent your truth, okay, and you stand behind it, and your foot are on the ground. You're not flying. I mean, you're being realistic. But you're having your own goal. The world respect you.
But if you kill all the Gazans,
kill all the Gazans? Who's talking about killing all the Gazans?
Because you're saying they are the same, all of them.
I'm not talking about killing all the Gazans, okay? I'm saying they cannot stay there. They declared the most horrific war on me at the 7th of October, and they cannot stay at that piece of land anymore.
Steven, do you have something to add about the settlers?
Do I have anything to add? No. I mean, I think I've said my piece on it, yeah.
Okay, Steven, so we'll go for a second past the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and let's talk about the jihadistic takeover of Europe. Do you think it's been blown out of proportion, or is there really a problem with the jihadistic takeover of Europe?
I think there are different places have such different problems, and it's very irritating when people conflate them all. Not saying that either of you two have, but so like I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mamdani, the New York City mayor or whatever. Yeah. So in the United States, we have people that say this is like a radical Islamic jihadist. I think is hilariously stupid. Like the Muslim population in the United States, really a lot of our immigrant populations are they're kind of like the best of any country they come from, just because there is such a huge distance between the US and the rest of the world. You have to cross an ocean to get here. Despite what conservatives say here about us not vetting people, the vetting process is very brutal. It's very difficult. Even, when my ex-wife was Swedish, even her coming into the country was just so annoying sometimes. It's so hard to get here. So we in the United States, we really don't have, I would say, a lot of the problems that other people might have. Now, when you go to Europe, I think that some of the places get a little bit spooky. Like in the United States, when I'm fighting, I'm a very big atheist. Okay, I'm very, I'll fight with Christians, I'll fight with Muslims. I have no problem I've made a lot of crazy, I don't know if you call them anti-Islamic tweets or whatever, but where I'll fight with people or whatever just because I think it's funny. No, not because I think it's funny. I'm trying to make a point too. But like, if I lived in like Paris or if I lived in London, I don't know if I would make the same tweets. I feel a little bit worried about that. Because I think that there are issues there, some of which is the types of immigrants that go to these places, the exclusion they feel from society. Earlier Moshe brought up that it's not just poverty that breeds terrorism. It can be other conditions too. I think it's more than just religion, but when you looked at ISIS, when they were starting to exist and recruit from across Europe, it wasn't poor, destitute Muslims that were joining ISIS. It was generally middle class Muslims. It was people that were like decently financially well off. And I think that it was more of like a feeling of exclusion from society and a calling to a greater mission or whatever that kind of like led a lot of these Muslims to leave their European places and go and fight with ISIS. So I think that there is an issue, I think, in some of the kind of like European places relating to immigrant populations. This gets into a lot of like domestic politics stuff. I think that liberals are just very weak sometimes when it comes to calling out like fact over fiction, and sometimes they get a little bit too narratively driven, and it makes for really dumb conversations. And when you're on a really basic thing, right? So I would say, for instance, I'm in the United States of America. I believe in freedom of speech. I'm a strong believer in freedom of religion, even though I'm very atheist. If you want to worship, whatever God you want, I think you should have the right to do so. Whether that means building a mosque next to the World Trade Center or building a Christian church next to an abortion clinic, whatever, as long as it's legal, you should have the right to do that. That being said, I have no problem saying when it comes to like religious extremist terrorism events, it seems like Muslims are more prone to that for whatever reason. When you're not willing to say something like that, and you just completely abandon it, one, people don't look at you as a credible source. And then two, the only people they'll listen to are conservatives. And I hate conservatives. I think conservatives talk about terrorism in crazy ways, but they're the only ones talking about it. So people look to them as being more truthful than the liberals. And then the religious people who are extremists become even more extreme because they're like, oh, well, all of you hate us because it's just the conservatives talking. And I think it's a really bad feedback loop that happens when it comes to dealing with these types of issues. The liberals are broadly starting to learn this in the West. We're like, okay, well, maybe we should talk about some of the problems with whether it's Islamic extremism or too much immigration or whatever. But it's taken them a long time to get there. That was a very broad overview of my feelings on that. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I'm happy that we're finally talking about your problems and not my problems.
Trust me, as an American citizen, there's nothing I would love more than to never talk about your country again, okay? Because my God, the neo-Nazis, the leftists, the tankies, everybody wants to talk about Israel all the time.
That's right. So, but let me tell you something about your problems, okay?
Sure. Oh, also, wait, one quick thing before you add. One quick thing I will say, too, is going to Israel, and I understand people will feel differently about it. I will say it's very funny. You mentioned the coffee thing. You guys drink so much coffee, but the Jewish people, the Arab people, when I'm in Israel, it's so funny because people talk about this thing called the bigotry of small differences. You go to like former Yugoslavia, you go to these places where there are these people that live right next to you. So you guys seem identical to each other. And it's like, no, we hate each other. We want to kill each other. And a Jewish person who lives in, especially Jerusalem, I feel like has so much more in common with an Arab that lives there than a Jewish person from Brooklyn. These people are worlds apart.
By the way, yeah. Genetically, it's amazing. Genetically, there is a proven kind of closeness between Jews and the Arabs in the land of Israel, basically because there were many Jews that approximately 1,000 years ago were forced to become Muslims. Sure. But going back to the issue you just spoke about, look, I was in New York at September 11. I was supposed to have a meeting in New York at that morning, okay? So I was very close and saw from within what is going on. Everything was shut down, and the meeting was canceled. So I went to a store to buy a dress for my wife. It was before the holiday of Rosh Hashanah in Israel. I wanted to come back with a present to my wife. I had nothing to do. Everything was shut off. The store was open. And I was listening to the radio. The shopkeeper, the owner, the lady, it was a lady. She was listening to the radio, and I heard President Bush talking to the nation at September 11. And while I was looking for a dress, I listened to the speech. And he said the following. He said, I call all Americans, go to church, go to churches, go to mosques, go to the synagogues, and pray for America. When I heard that, I almost, I couldn't believe it. And I went to the shopkeeper, I went to the lady who was, I don't know what she did. And I told her, I wasn't sure I was hearing right. Did he say go to the mosques? She looked at me, she says, yes.
Mm.
So I told her, you just lost the war. Later on, I wrote an article named America Had Lost the War. You can see it on the web, saying exactly what's going to happen. You see, Stephen, in World War II, when America was attacked by the Japanese in Pearl Harbor, there was a national return address. You picked yourself up. It took time until the midway battle and so on, and the wheel of war flipped over and so on. It took time. Thousands of soldiers were dead. But at the end, you won the war because you knew who your enemy is. There was a return address. The return address was the state of Japan, the national state of Japan. Okay? When those terrorists at September 11, those planes hit the Twin Towers, okay? Who did they fight in the name of? What was the last sentence that those terrorists screamed before they smashed into the Twin Tower? It was not for the people of Palestine, for the Holy Land or whatever. It was Allahu Akbar. They declared a religious war on you Americans. And just as Israel today, you were not willing to accept it because the state of America, the nation of America, is a civilian nation. It's based on the separation of state and church and the whole concept of the new enlightened world after the French Revolution. You cannot go and fight the Islamic religion or something like that from the state of mind where you are. So what happened? You looked for a national war in the Iraqi desert, and of course, after many years and casualties, you ran away and you lost that war. Just as I mentioned, you see, just as Israel with the so-called Palestinians, you have the same problem in America. You have a problem with Islam. There's no extreme Islam. There's no good Islam and bad Islam. There is Islam. You have to realize who your enemy is.
All of the Islam? All of them. By the way, all these terrorists in those airplanes, where did they come from? You know where from? Where?
From Saudi Arabia. Okay. Let's not fool us. I'm not against making business with Saudi. Don't misunderstand me. I'm very realistic.
With the normalization and all that.
I'm in favor of doing business with everybody based on interests. I don't want peace with them. I want respect with them. I want to have relationship based on respect and interests of both sides. But don't foolish me anymore with this peace talks. Okay? I know exactly who you are. I know exactly what you're looking for. I know exactly what you dream at night. Okay? And you should know that I see you. Okay? Respect me. We'll all live better. The Iranian, the Jordanians, everybody, they'll have water, they have everything that Israel can give. Okay? If they'll give something in return, and not peace. Not peace. You don't pay me with peace. Okay? You pay me with goods. This is the only kind of relationship that can work in the Middle East. But you have to understand your enemy. You have to understand where he comes from. You have to understand what he believes, what makes him tick. Okay? This is realistic, nothing else.
You think Stephen doesn't understand it?
Yes. You know why?
Okay.
Because he's atheist. He cannot think in any other way.
Stephen, how do you react to it?
But to be fair, I was raised Catholic, and if we wanted to follow the religious thing to its natural ends, wouldn't every Christian view every Jew as an enemy? If we thought that Jesus was the fulfillment of the old scripture and the Jews killed Jesus, and every Jew that exists today is just somebody who hasn't recognized that Jesus is the Son of God, wouldn't that be a never-ending holy war against the Jews from the Christians? Or how do the people technically, wouldn't all the people of the book, you used that phrase earlier, constantly and forever be at war with each other?
Well, to be totally honest, I am not surprised at all about the fact that also the American right becomes more and more anti-Semite, like Tucker and others. I'm not surprised. Once we showed weakness in Israel, once we show that we are disconnected from the vision that's supposed to be to bring light to the entire nation, not only the left is against us, but also the right getting more and more against us.
But how is it connected to what Stephen said?
Because the sources of anti-Semitism is, yes, we killed your God, right? According to your to the Catholic story. At the end of the day, anti-Semitism, look, it's not the same thing between Christianity and Islam, with the ability to find common cooperation,
common ground
with the Western world, okay, with the Christian world is much bigger. But yes, somewhere under many rugs, deep inside, yes, there is anti-Semitism there too. You're right.
Stephen, you have something to add to that?
No, I think obviously I have a much more secularized view of the world. But maybe.
But do you think though that maybe that's funny? But do you think though that maybe the Jewish people exaggerate the reason why some of the people of the United States hate them, think about them bad things, all of that, and all of the Israeli people, a lot of them, resolve to anti-Semitism as a solution instead of solving the problem or understanding the problem?
I don't know. I don't know. I hate anti-Semitism is so boring to me. I'm like a very center-left person, so the anti-Semitism of the far left is literally just America bad. They hate America, so anything that America supports, they hate, and anything that they view as being like an extension of what the Western powers. So the far left will have a very, I would say, Palestinian oriented view of Jewish people in Israel. So all Jews are just European settlers. They'll ignore the diasporas and everything after 48 or whatever. They just say that all the Jews are there from Europe and they need to go back to Brooklyn or whatever else. And then anti-Semitism on the right is just the right in the United States is very conspiratorial about everything. And the idea that Jews control everything, it's just an easy scapegoat and an abdication of responsibility for domestic politics to blame everything on Jews. So yeah, I mean, there is like a lot of if I was a Jew in the United States, I would be pretty worried just because so many, the political conversations I think have made so much anti-Semitism kind of permissible as long as you speak about it correctly. I'll hear a lot of people say things like, well, I don't hate Jews, I just hate Zionists. And it's like, well, that's like 90% of Jews. It's like basically like every Jew kind of thinks that they should have some kind of country, you know?
Today, today they're not trying even to say that anymore.
Yeah, it depends. Or, you know, on the right, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a good reason to feel like there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the West right now. I think the international community has done a great disservice to the region as well. I look pretty favorably on these kind of superstructures like the UN and everything. But whenever there's like a report released about Israel, I usually have to go through and read the fucking report, sometimes hundreds of pages, because I can't trust, you know, just anything in its word, just because everybody's brain breaks as soon as this region comes up for whatever reason. So, yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. It doesn't help, you know, fix anything. But some people like their scapegoats, I guess. Yeah.
Do you think, though, Stephen, there is a blind spot in Moshe Feiglin's like view? And if so, can you like tell?
I'm sure he does. He thinks that I have a blind spot, and I think he has a blind spot, and that's perfectly okay.
That's okay. Just
to just understand how we define this blind.
Yeah, just
blind
to
spot.
highlight. Stephen.
There is oh God, it's not Balin. It's I'm trying to remember the author of I met him. I interviewed him when I was in Israel, and I forget his name. But he has this term that I really like. It's going to be insulting to you, but he calls it messianic hallucinations. And I think basically I think that the nation of Israel, I think, was very kind of like secular minded and very political minded. You know, I think
Trumpeldor and all of that. Yeah.
What?
With Trumpeldor and all of that, like a lot of the early people were basically secular.
Yes, yeah. And I think Ben-Gurion was obsessed with getting some kind of favorable relationship or security guarantee with the West. I think the whole Suez crisis and working with France and the UK and everything was all part of this. And the 6-Day War was like the ultimate nightmare for the Jewish nation of, oh my God, we're having an existential war and we have no security guarantees from the West and it's just us. And I think the worst thing that came out of that was the massive victory, and especially the extension of the territory through the West Bank up to the River Jordan, I think kind of fostered this idea of, you know, we're not just here surviving anymore, we're here by our religious right, and now we're here to conquer the historic lands that were promised to us. And I think that idea was kind of fostered, and I feel like it grew a lot. And I think today you see it in the more, I guess, like right-leaning sectors of you know, whether it's the Likud or the settlers or the outposters or whatever, of this divine right to the land. And as soon as the scary thing is when you start talking about divine right to stuff, this is not stuff that is up for negotiation or can be deliberated on. This is just you accept it or you die. And that's very scary to me when people start speaking in terms of divine right, because yeah, there's just no room for negotiation. But I mean, but I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any God or anything. So if you think the divine right is real, I mean, you should fight for it. I mean, that's what you're.
The Jewish divine right.
Yeah,
Yes,
to the lands
yes.
of
No,
Judeans.
I'm listening and I'm fascinated.
Yeah. But I mean,
Because-
I'll make the same concession. Like I say this a lot with when it comes to 48. Like I said, like it's funny arguing with you because in America, I'm like people view me as like a radical Zionist, like super pro-Zionist, because I tend to view. I mean, if anything, I mean, Israel is more a Western-style nation, and the telling of history is a bit more honest on the Israeli side than the Palestinian side. But like in 48. In 47, really, right? You said the civil war between the Palestinians and the Jews that was looking really bad for the Jewish people there initially. If the Palestinians would have won that war and expelled all the Jews, you know, I would have gotten it. I would have said, oh yeah, I get it. You know, they won. That was it. How am I going to criticize the Arabs fighting there? You know, when Turkey had just done this even worse, you know, 20, 25 years earlier. And if the Jews would have won and expelled all of the Arabs from the land, I would have understood it as well. I think that when it comes to the conflict of nations, it's much harder to draw these strict right or wrongs because both sides can feel very justified in fighting for what they believe is true, and they can have nations and groups of people that believe in this. But I mean, after a certain amount of time, once enough time has passed, once we're in a different kind of world, you have to say, okay, well, even if in 48, I can see the justification on both sides. You're Arabs, you see Europeans coming into what you thought was going to be your land, and you want to fight them all, or you're Jewish and you had a promise to this land from the Brits, and now they're turning ships around to go back to die to the Nazi death camps, and you can't even have land that was supposed to be promised to you. You can't even bring people in anymore. I understand why both sides were fighting, and I think that both sides can be justified for it, but it's hard in a modern day scenario to see both sides have like these divine right justifications to fight forever, because it's like the only solution is for one side to basically wipe the other side out, which I think is not desirable,
Well, I think since 1948, the independent war of Israel, the reason why the Arabs are fighting is because we are giving them hope, which what we talked about before.
Hope of having the entire Palestine land.
And I'll give you a perfect example for it, okay? You mentioned the 6-Day War. Israel is having a tremendous victory. You're right, of course, about it, on the 6-Day War. and we're getting up our holy city, Jerusalem, and including the Temple Mount, the place where the first temple built by King Solomon was built, and the second temple was built, and hopefully the third temple will be built forever.
You believe it?
I'm sure. I'm not an atheist. Look, I'll tell you something. I'll immediately answer your question, and then I'll continue what I wanted to say, okay? If you come to a Soviet soldier in May 1945, who just liberated Auschwitz, and you tap on his shoulder, and you tell him, look, you see this Muslim, this ghost, not human beings anymore, what's left, still moving around, but they're not really, they look like ghosts, black ghosts, those Jews that somehow managed to survive Auschwitz, okay? And you're telling this Russian soldier, you know something? In 3 years from now, these Jews that you see here, these ghosts, going to go to the land of Israel, going to fight for their own sovereign state, going to win against 5 Arab countries, going to create a state that in 70 years, its economy is going to be bigger per capita than England, Germany, and France. Okay? For most of Europe. Soon we're going to pass the American GDP as well, by the way. Mm-hmm. I'm sure. I have no doubt about it. Okay? What would this Russian or Soviet soldier would think about you? He would think that you're crazy, right? Mm-hmm. If there would have been a doctor there, he would call him right away. But this is exactly what happened, Moshe. And you know why?
Why?
Because it was promised to us 3,300 years before in Mount Sinai. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the distance between May 1945, okay, and May 1948, the creation of the State of Israel, was much longer than where we're standing today to the rebuild of the temple. And just as this promise was fulfilled miraculously against all odds, okay, also that will be fulfilled. So I'm sure it will. Okay, I'm not an atheist. I'm a believer. I see that amazing existence of the Jewish nation. Okay, for thousands of years, against all rules of history and nature. I mean, we saw the Babylons, we saw the Greeks, we saw the Pharaonites, we saw the Romans, we saw all of them. And survived and continued and came back to our promised land miraculously, just as was promised to us in the Bible. So yes, I definitely believe that the third temple will be built simply because God promised it to us exactly the same way. Now back to what I was trying to say before. But what happened in 1967? So God gives us this miracle war. Again, it was done by the hands of the Jewish soldiers, but it was a miracle. By the way, in the academies, in the military academies all over the world, they do not teach the battles of 6-Day War because it's against any logic what happened over there. okay? Including the American, what's the name of the American famous war academy?
Wagner, no?
Top Gun. I'm just
Top
kidding.
Gun.
I'm sorry.
No,
That's funny. That was a funny
No,
reference.
your academy, war academy. I forgot the name. Anyhow, so
At West Point? Is that what you're
West
talking
Point,
about?
yes, on West Point.
Okay,
Thank
got
you. In West Point, they admit you cannot teach the strategic of the 6-Day War because it was a miracle against all odds. Now we are the Israelites, okay? We getting back the holy of all holies. We getting the Temple Mount, the place where the temple were standing in. And what do? Immediately, what Moshe Dayan is doing, the secretary minister, immediately after we getting it, we capturing it, we taking over it, what do? We giving it back to the Muslim Waqf. And there was no international pressure at the time. It was like the 8th or the 9th of October. The whole world was staring, including the Muslim world could not believe. How come we're giving it back to the Muslim? And you know, Stephen, why we did that? Because the truth is exactly the opposite of what you said, okay? Unfortunately, I wish you were right. And Israel would have looked at the tremendous achievement of the 6-Day War as a point where we're coming back to our identity, our destiny, and message to the entire world. But this spiritual message that Jerusalem and the Temple Mount carry was too heavy on the secular Zionism. We did not want to deal with that at all. We wanted to be a nation like all the nations. We wanted to be realistic, as you say. So he gave back the keys of the Temple Mount to the Waqf. And from the same very reason, we decided not to win the war in Gaza and not to take over Gaza. It's exactly the same thing. It's a problem that we have with our own identity and not a problem that we have with our enemies or with the international pressure. It's exactly the opposite. We wanted to remain secular.
Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say that something should have gone differently, but I think all of us here acknowledge that the existence of Israel is pretty miraculous. Well, I won't use that term. There was a lot of work done, but no, yeah. I mean, like even from a secular perspective, right? It's pretty amazing. That
there's a crack over there. I feel there's a crack over there.
Just to exist today, in that region, and I think a lot of it had to do with styling themselves as a Western style nation, and for having a better mind for politics than Arab leadership did, and for maybe things that you disagree with, but I mean, I think there is a bit of moral authority that comes from saying of all the time that the Temple Mount has been controlled, it's only when Jews have been in control that Muslims and Jews are free to visit their respective sites. And, given that site completely to some Arab or Muslim entity, that wouldn't be the case. Anytime you tip a rock over anywhere near that place, a Muslim is afraid that something will be uncovered. So you have to be careful in terms of who's allowed to control the land. And I think there's something to be said for the fact that there was a secular approach to Israel, and it seemed to wildly succeed against all odds. Like you said, in 1945, the idea of that country coming into existence, really at any point up to the country even existing, and even when the country existed, the idea that it would continue on in any form, I think was highly suspicious. I feel like in books I've seen the phrase like the rib cage of Tel Aviv when the West Bank was under Jordanian control, and there's just this very narrow strip. And I remember reading stories of there were certain days I think that you could do dishes, or certain times of the day that you could do dishes if you lived in West Jerusalem, because snipers could see you from the other side of the city if you did it when the sun was to the east. And right. The fact that Israel took the approach they did, with a Western style democracy in mind, with a secular approach in mind, I think has allowed them to incorporate 2 million Palestinian Arabs into the Israeli society, has allowed them to gain favor with the West, has allowed them to govern themselves in such a way that, as annoying and as obnoxious as people, like even I I think that Salam has its problems and is crazy at a lot of stuff. But there's something to be said for the fact that Israel has succeeded to this day. And I don't know if the approach would have been an ultra religiously adamant one. I don't know if it would have succeeded in the same way. You know, maybe a super religious Jewish people would have actually inspired the Muslim unity that Nasser fantasized about, or that Hamas fantasizes about, or that anybody else fantasizes about. Maybe the fact that Israel was secular was one of the reasons why it was able to succeed as long as it has been, or in the way that it has been. But it's always hard to do historical counterfactuals. So,
you're right that you never know what would have happened if you would have been something. You would have done something else. But I want to make sure that I'm understood. I'm not talking about a religious state simply because Judaism is not a religion. Judaism is a culture that combines religion and nationality at the same time. And it's the only one who does that. You can be, Judaism is a religion and Judaism is a nationality, okay? And basically the Jewish nation is the part of the chain that combine humanity to God, because it's a mixture of spirituality and physics at the same time, okay? Physics and metaphysics at the same time. And by the way, that place, the Temple Mount, and the temple that will be rebuilt over there symbolize this connection between physics and metaphysics. So I'm not talking about a religious state. I'm talking about all benefits of a modern state, democratic state, free state, because Judaism is about the freedom. We are not Islamic extremists who glorified death. We glorified life. We're talking about the message of life that comes out of Zion, the message of life that comes out of the Temple Mount, combined with all the goods that modern life can bring. It's not in a contradiction, Stephen. It's exactly the opposite. But because we ran away from our destiny, because we gave away the keys, we gave them hope. And because we gave them hope, we got all these continuous wars. And at the end, we got the 7th of October. If we would have connected ourselves to our destiny, to our message, to who we really are and what is our goal in this world, it doesn't mean that we would have become primitive. The whole world would have enjoy the same high tech that comes from the Silicon Valley of the Middle East and Israel, the high tech nation, and so on. But our light to the nation would not be just high tech; it would have been also a spiritual light to the nation.
Stephen.
Okay.
So just a second, just to let's just say summarize the points where you don't agree with Moshe, and where do you see his blind spots in this whole debate that we had?
I mean, I guess I'm not sure if we have blind spots. More so, we just view things as we just have a couple factual disagreements that would maybe change either of our opinions, or we have a difference of where we think the future would go. I think that a stricter adherence to some Jewish identity that calls for any type of mass expulsion, even if it's done on a voluntary basis, I just don't think that would be successful. I don't think any of the populations in the surrounding Arab states, in the West, or in Israel itself, I don't think could handle it politically. And I just don't see that as being a successful path forward. If I was the country of Israel and I was trying to maximize for 100 years more of Israeli existence, my biggest fear would be having the West abandon me because of whatever young progressives or whatever just feelings they have about Palestinians. And it would be about losing the Arab street in every surrounding country, or the Arab leadership especially. These would be the things that I would be worried about. And antagonizing or stoking the flames of the Palestinian crisis and causing all of them to flee, I think would just be seen as a Nakba 2.0. and that would be my biggest fear. And losing the support from the West, and then making enemies of everybody in the Middle East. As a result of that, if that were to happen, I think that would be the end. That would be my biggest fear.
Also react to it, Moshe, and also add what do you think is the difference in opinion, and what you don't agree with Steve and Destiny.
Well, the biggest disagreement is is the belief. He doesn't believe. Stephen don't believe in God, and I do. Okay, and I think it's not just a theoretical disagreement between us. It goes down to the roots of the discussion and radiate to all of it. It all starts and ends there.
Because he doesn't see their POV, can't understand it.
If you don't understand there is a God, if you don't understand there is truth, you don't understand there is morality, okay, you're trying to fix your way from the middle, okay, without going back to the roots of it, you can't really solve it. And the truth of the matter, and you got to admit, that all the solutions that Stephen is in favor of we tried all of them in the most extremist, crazy way. Oslo was a fanatic solution, bringing a bunch of terrorists, putting them at the 500 meters from the kindergarten of Be'eri, expecting you'll get peace from it. Okay, that was a fanatic, I would say, secular religious ideas. Okay, so these kind of secular or so-called realism proved itself to be everything besides realistic. Let's try, for once and for all, my solution. Okay, it was never tried. I mean, Stephen has to admit that my solution, we never tried it. Even when the president of the United States said, go ahead and do it. We decided not to. We decided to give back the keys to the Waqf. We decided to keep the Arabs living in Gaza. Why? And making sure that the 7th of October will happen again, God forbid. And it will. Why? Because we're trying to be realistic according to these concepts that Stephen is talking about, because we're trying to keep disconnecting ourselves from our Jewish identity. It goes back, and again I'm saying, it's not about the Arabs. It's not about the pressure from the world. It's about us. When we, the Jews, will make peace inside us between the Israeli identity and the Jewish identity, when these two identities will become one, there'll be no problem anymore with the neighbors.
Stephen, you have something to add?
No, I feel like we said our piece.
The last thing that I want to talk about, because that's going to be the final question, you are going to run with your party and Zehut, identity, in the following elections, Moshe. What do you think about the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Moshe Feiglin, as the former MK in the party of Likud, which he represents?
Well, Netanyahu and Stephen thinking alike.
What do you mean?
I think if Stephen would have been an Israeli citizen, he would have voted for Netanyahu. Okay?
That's an interesting observation.
Netanyahu is being realistic. And it's not that we got the 7th of October under a leftist government. We got the 7th of October under a full right-wing government. Okay? Netanyahu, after Netanyahu got into power in 1996 for the first time, because the national side of the Israeli society wanted to get rid of Oslo, those who connected to their roots and their identity, okay, the religious, the nationalists, voted Likud, and instead of throwing these agreements that led to the 7th of October at the end, and big line of bloodshed until then, in the 30 years that passed since then, he went away. He went ahead and hugged Arafat and said he found a good friend. Later on, he gave the Bar-Ilan speech, basically observed all the concepts of Oslo and at the end and he released Sinwar, and basically he was realistic. And at the 7th of October, when he had the best of it opportunity to throw the Oslo process and that led to these horrors, to the garbage of history, and simply take over the Gaza Strip in few days, okay? He did everything that this will not happen. All he had in mind is being realistic, meaning go back to the ball game of Oslo, go back to the 6th of October, definitely not to take over the whole Gaza Strip and bring the Israeli army to the full control on the entire society in Gaza and so on. So I think Benjamin Netanyahu, even though he's a genius, I must say, and on the economical side, he did tremendous things for Israel, but his direction was a direction of atheist, okay? Jabotinsky was an atheist. The concept that Netanyahu follows is this realistic concept. The name of his first book was Place Among the Nation. We're just looking for a place among the nation, not a light to the nations, but just find myself a villa in the jungle, somewhere that no one, will attack me. Well, it's a time that the Israeli society will transfer itself from Zionism of existence, from Zionism of surviving, from Zionism that this memorial, Yad Vashem, Holocaust Memorial, is its temple, okay, to a society of a vision, to a state that connect itself to the vision and to the goal that kept the Jewish nation for 2,000 years, to the vision of our old Jewish vision, and see the state of Israel as a tool to fulfill this vision for the goods of the entire humanity. So, on one hand,
just to finish the point, also, so add to Stephen, yes, because we don't have a lot of time.
Just the last sentence. So, on one hand, I thank Benjamin Netanyahu to the good service he did to Israel with the economy and many other aspects as well. But I think it's about time that we're going to create in Israel a total different leadership, a leadership of vision.
I understand. Stephen, what do you think about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
I mean, obviously, I disagree with. I feel like he's done a lot of short-term compromise for long-term stuff. I don't feel like his vision is serving the long-term stability of Israel. But I feel like I've already kind of I feel like I've gone over a lot of the points of that. It just feels like everything is kind of like a short-term solution. I view like the Abraham Accords as being kind of a mistake. The idea that you can continue to kick the can down the road on the Palestinian question and just kind of continue to extract all of the surrounding Arab states for these bilateral peace agreements, or multilateral, I guess, for the Abraham Accords. But that kind of goes into all of the other conversation I think that we had earlier. Yeah.
I understand. Well, I think that was a great conversation. I think both of you showed different types of points of view. First of all, you can find Stephen Bonnell, Destiny, on his YouTube channel down below. Also, Moshe Feiglin with your own book, which is
Israel is Just the Beginning. You can get it on Amazon. And as I said, it's right now number one on the bestseller on the subject of Middle East studies. Look at the comments over there. People are giving a tremendous, great comments. And I want to tell you, Stephen, that it was a pleasure speaking to you. I enjoyed it. And you're always welcome to Karnei Shomron. Next time you're coming to Israel, we'll have a cup of coffee, if you like coffee or something else, in my house in Karnei Shomron.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation as well. And yeah, thanks for inviting me again.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, Stephen, and Moshe as well.
Yeah.
I was Moshe Fabrikant, that was Moshe Feiglin, and Stephen Bonnell, and we're here. Goodbye. Thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate